Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Woods and I'm joined today by my special guest, Jackie White, who will be talking to us and chatting about the simplicity and magic of Ho'oponopono. I've got that wrong. I'm afraid I can't say it. So I'm going to hand you over now to Jackie White. Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
I can't pronounce the Ho'oponopono. So would you do it for us?
Yeah, what I'd like to be talking about today with you is Ho'oponopono. That's the way I say it, but there is another way. I know Dennis says it is Ho'oponopono, but that's like the Hawaiian way. But Ho'oponopono is fine, yeah.
I've heard a lot of different versions. Mine definitely isn't the correct one. So thank you for that. So Jackie, I've invited you here because I really want to chat to you today and find out more about you and how you got into this, Hopo, I'm going to call it for short. And you were saying that it's brilliant for miracles and simplicity, and it can be used daily. So can you just tell me, how did you discover it? How have you got into it?
Wow. I'll start a bit about myself because that's how I found out about Ho'oponopono. So yeah, back in 2010, I went on a happiness course in London with Robert Holden, and that was a week-long course, and you learn. It was to be a happiness coach. So come away from that. It was the best week ever. It really was. 64 people from all around the world. And then I come back from that full of really wanting to share happiness with everyone, what I'd learned, going into schools and everything. But probably I still had an old belief that the schools wouldn't want me to go into. I wasn't a teacher or anything, and so I was rejected from 3 different schools. And then it was another year, I think. I was still asking people, talking about happiness, but I don't think it had really settled within me what I'd learned. Excuse me. And so I went to a day course. I have hypnotherapy in the morning and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, in the afternoon. And the neuro-linguistic programming chat, which I'd never heard of it before, but gosh, he was so interesting. And he said we get trained in all of these things, but we never put any of it to you, or generalizing. Not a lot of us put any of this. And quite right, I'd been to crystal courses, no end of courses, mindfulness, so many, but the one that really stood out for me was the happiness, and that's what I really wanted to do. So the next day I booked up a 6-week at a hall 6-week course, and then one of the girls that came along on that first course, I think I called it "How Happy Are You" or something. And we had 14 people. It was really wonderful. And one of the girls that came along on that course was Jackie Cross, which we both know.
Yes.
And so after the course, we carried on meeting up each week, and she introduced us to the book that had just come out then, which was probably about 12 years ago. It would have been, because that was 2010. Oh no, so 11 years ago, because by the time I did the course. And she talked about Joe Vitale's book, Zero Limits, Ho'oponopono. And so I got the CD and listened to it, and I loved it. I loved the concept of it. I could tell you the story of it, which really gripped me, which made so much sense.
Yeah, please. Yes.
So how Joe Vitale found out about it was from a friend who mentioned it. He took a year to find Dr. Hugh Len, and Dr. Hugh Len was the chap that he went on to work with and wrote the book Zero Limits. So Dr. Hugh Len had a daughter in the mid 70s. She had shingles, and she'd been to every doctor. therapist and everyone. And the poor girl, she was only 13 and she couldn't get rid of the shingles. And so then he heard about Morna Simeona, who was a kahuna in Hawaii. But she was really well known, and she worked with Ho'oponopono, which is to make right, to make right. So Pono is to make right, make right. Ho is, oh, I have to remember what that means. But anyway, the whole thing is to delete.
Great job there, Jackie.
Old memories. So anyway, his daughter, after seeing Morna Simeona, got better. So he knew there must be something to it, even though he was like a scientific man and he'd always, you know, he needed to understand things scientifically. But then he went along to Morna's workshops because he really wanted to understand that more. And 3 times he had to go. He walked out of 2 of them because she was talking about elementals, cuddling trees, you know, things that was not really in his realm, and he couldn't get his mind around that.
Scientific.
Exactly, yeah. So, but he just knew there was something to it. So he went a 3rd time, and then that was the late 78, I think. And he stayed with her then until she transitioned in 1992. And so all along that way, you know, he's learning more and more about Ho'oponopono. And in the mid-80s, he was asked to go to a mental institution ward in a hospital for criminally insane patients. Well, I say insane. They'd committed the most heinous of crimes. And he was asked to go along because they couldn't keep any staff there. The turnover of staff was awful. The staff were manipulating the patients manipulating the staff. They were shackled, they were highly medicated, the paint wouldn't stay on the walls. It was a very horrible, unloved place. And so he went there on the proviso that he wouldn't have to see any of the patients. And they were so desperate by this time, because they'd had such a turnover of staff, that they agreed to that. So the girl that I heard talking about it said that she didn't really think he was doing very much. He was very pleasant. He'd walk in each morning and say good morning. And then he'd go up in his office. And after about 4 months, the shackles were coming off. The medication was being lowered. The staffing, they were overstaffed rather than understaffed. Oh. And so all that they were thinking he wasn't doing anything, things were all obviously changing. Paint was staying on the walls. So she went to him and asked if he could tell her what it was he was doing. And so he got them all together and explained the system of Ho'oponopono. And what he would do was go to his office every morning, pull out a file on one of the patients, inmates, and read whatever they'd done. And whatever that brought up within him, whatever feelings that because it could have been repulsion, anger, vile, you know, the worst of whatever he felt, he would just say over and over again, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and I thank you. And that's actually, I'm sorry for what, I haven't got that with me, but anyway, I'm sorry for whatever is in me that's creating this situation. Please forgive me for bringing this situation to me to be healed. I love you and I thank you, and I return to 0. So it was just taking full 100% responsibility, knowing that you're the only person, and this is the big one to get your mind around, you're the only person in your creation. So if we create our reality, then whatever our life's like, we've created it. So if someone's come into your reality with these things that he's just read about, he's taken 100% responsibility that on some level he's created that. And so he's asking divinity. Well, it's actually asking your inner child, which runs your whole universe, your whole body. It does your breathing for you. It runs the body. So your inner child has to understand what what you need to let go of. So you're actually asking your inner child. The inner child lets it go to divinity, and then divinity clears and cleanses, opens you up for inspiration. So you're actually a blank sheet. So what we're aiming to be with Ho'oponopono is just a blank sheet. At zero.
Jackie. I really love the way that you just explained that as well, about, because that's the bit I should think people might think, okay, so there's these sentences that I say, you know, forgive me, you know, these words, and you know, there's some simplicity in that. Hence your, you know, what you're talking about here is the simplicity. And then the other side of it is the magic, isn't it? It's the magic of, you know, that there's something greater, this inner child, this divine self. Many people call it different names. I know I do as well. But, you know, it's the effectiveness of this that is really interesting. And this, I want to talk more about this reflection, you know, this reflection of what you were saying, that he was just looking at a file. So he wasn't even seeing these people. He was literally just looking at them and asking the self, that inner self. And I mean, that's really quite fascinating, isn't it? Really fascinating.
Completely.
And kind of a new concept in you know, not now, but as you say, when this was all discovered, it was very, and very kind of, you know, for some people who may not be able to get their head around that, this simplicity and then suddenly this reflection. So, I mean, can you talk more about that? Can you tell me from your perspective?
Yes, because I mean, the 4 sayings cover everything that's so crucial to us, but so simplistic. I'm sorry. So for us to actually take responsibility, there's no blame and then there's no shame. You're not looking at us outside of yourself and thinking that person done this to me. You know that you are the only person in your reality. So once you realize that, and it's not to bring any heaviness upon you, it literally is just to take that responsibility, but to know that you're clearing and cleaning it for you, but for everyone, for your ancestors as well. Once it comes away from you, once you start to feel better in yourself, once you start to get relief from it, and some took days, some took days for him to start getting a relief from it. But once you start to feel that relief and you're not feeling whatever comes up for you, then you're clearing it from the whole of the universe, actually. So your universe is clearer.
I was going to ask you a question there, because it's something that just came to mind. When obviously he was doing this work, or when you're doing this work, using it for yourself, which obviously we'll get to in a bit, but how do you know when you've got to that point? What you mentioned, there's a point where you just feel it's cleared. Or
when you don't get a reaction from reading what you're reading, from seeing from hearing what you're hearing. When you say to people you're taking responsibility and you're saying, I'm sorry and please forgive me for whatever you think you're blaming someone else for. Once you can realize that you're taking that all on for yourself, to clear yourself, for you to be a clear channel. I don't know if there's a point. So where the simplicity and the magic is, I don't think there's anything that's come up. You know, I'll still say touch wood and whistle, but but I don't think anything serious has come up for me that I've really had to, because I hope that where I'm doing it, and it is a 24/7, but it is a simple 24/7 thing, that you're literally over in your mind, knowing that you're saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. Because you do hear some very awful, once you start saying that you're asking people, and I'm not asking anyone to say, I'm sorry and please forgive me. No one has to do this. It works for me. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But people say, so yeah, some awful situations for people that have come up. And of course, life still happens.
Sorry, just wanted to say something there, because really there's a lot of different belief systems or different systems about taking responsibility, and this is very much about that, isn't it? It's about taking responsibility of self, but then it's taking it to another level, which actually says that, you know, there is just the one of us. That's really what you're saying, in effect, because it is that change yourself and then everything else around you changes. Yeah. So this is like, as I said, taking it one step further from the point of view of, you know, most people, a lot of people, it's easily done. We can blame someone else. We can see their situation. You know, you're talking about going into this mental prison, or, you know, certainly people with serious, experiences that they've had in life. And being able to be non-judgmental is also comes to mind, doesn't it? It's being taking responsibility for self and being completely non-judgmental about what you're experiencing. Because when you're asking, or when you're stating, let's say, forgive me, I'm sorry, I love you, and the other one that I've missed, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you. Yes, of course, thank you. So it's like really, I get a sense of like cleansing self. I'm taking responsibility for my part in the grand scheme of things, for that greater part that we don't always see, do we? We don't know particularly much about the soul, the oversoul, source, God, oneness, whatever. But what we do know is that we're a part of that, and that through the ability to take responsibility for ourselves, that then the outer world changes. And this is very much what you're confirming.
Definitely. And the 4 phrases, so even the thank you is gratitude. So, you know, you don't do it actually for any one particular situation. Obviously, you know, if something comes up, then I would more consciously start saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. Just to remember that I need to be at 0, you know, or that is where I love to be, because then you're open to inspiration to come in. And once the inspiration comes in, then you move forward with the next step. So I'm not much one for goals or for, you know, future. I'm just going to go, because a goal or an expectation can actually limit you for what, you know, miracles can happen. It really can. You know, the group people that I've met recently, in the last 18 months, you know, at the stand in the park, you know, I don't know, was I such a clear channel that, you know, that's what brought that awareness to me to go up there and start that in the beginning with Jen McFarlane, you know, but what's come from that is there's 300 people that come up now, not every week, but, you know, different things have happened. But from that, then, you know, that many people that we've all got so much in common with, and you get invited to so many other things that, you know, life is really, so it's what, you know, if you're saying, oh, life's really tough, but we work through it, life is going to continue to be really tough, and you will continue to work through it. We know, you know, that's, if you're saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you, you're not putting anything onto anything there other than you want to be a clear channel to move forward in your life. For me, yeah,
because I was going to ask you actually, how has it applied in your life? You know, how do you use it? Because a lot of people might that are new to this, that may not have heard of it. I mean, I know it is very well known, but it's something about remembering it as well, isn't there? Being able to remember to do that, and to remember that, you know, we are a great power, and that what we see outside of us. I mean, I have this, I don't know how you feel about this, Jackie, but I have this kind of, whatever we perceive outside of ourselves, whether that's a good situation or not so good, you know, something negative might crop up for us. And it's how we respond to those situations, good and bad. And this is kind of what you're saying, aren't you? It's about clearing, it's being able to see things and be able to say, that's about myself on some level. Because as I said, there's this grander idea, how I might explain it, and I'm not sure if it would fit with anyone else, but to kind of put some detail into this is, if we imagine that we have an oversoul, which is projecting, let's just say, this illusionary kind of, from the soul perspective, the oversoul perspective, these different realities as it would appear from, you know, looking at the oversoul, there's all these different realities that are appearing, what some people might call timelines or past lives or future lives. So these are being reflected to us here in order for us then to come into consciousness and experience it physically. If we're experiencing it physically, but we're made up at this whole, the oversoul, the whole of it all, then really aren't we just getting glimpses of these different timelines or these realities? And if so, that means on some level, perhaps, that we're, they're all happening at the same time. And that's a no time, no space reality kind of viewpoint, perhaps. And that we, in each given moment, are able to see those reflections so that, those lives, yourself is, completely different consciousness to myself, but we're all experiencing it all together ultimately. So this, I still can't pronounce it, so I'm going to call it HOPO, is just an amazing tool that we've been given, I guess, and they've been explored, worked on, experimented, so to speak. So can you give us an example in your life? Because we all have moments, no matter how
absolutely,
no matter how because we're meant to be constantly changing and growing. And so when we see these things being played out outside of us and we take responsibility for them, so can you give me an example of the sort of things that perhaps do pop up from you for time to time? It could be random, I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, life happens, doesn't it? I've got 2 boys.
Yes. Great reflections.
So I've got to remember that, I'm 100% responsible for whatever judgment that I'm making when anything comes up for them. And what I hope for is, so one of them's moving house at the minute. Well, this Friday he'll be moving house. But that's been an ongoing situation for 5 months now. And there's been a lot of twists and turns, ups and downs, as you would say. And they say what are stressful, but in that 5 months as well, they got married.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah. So can you imagine, I could see my son, actually, and his wife now, I could see myself as a younger person when I was their age, the stress levels, how I reacted. I mean, it was looking at a reflection of me. And instead of getting into that drama and feeling as anxious or whatever situations, whatever they came up with, was showing me, and I was thanking them because it just showed me, I wasn't awake. I would not have been awake to listening to me then, to Ho'oponopono for help, But for me personally, when any of these things, and I've had some phone calls, and I don't think he'd mind me saying, well, he wouldn't hear me saying this because he won't listen to this, I'm sure. But so all I'm thinking within my mind is, I love you and thank you. I love you and thank you. Because Mabel Katz, who actually wrote this book, The Easiest Way.
Okay. Not heard
Mabel Katz. And she lived with Dr. Hugh Len for 11 years, not romantically, but she's actually taken on, he passed away last November, Dr. Hugh Len, and Mabel Katz has taken on. And she actually says you don't even need to say all 4 sentences. I love you and thank you is enough. So what I'm saying is when all these different situations have come up, and I haven't wanted them to stress over anything, I just want it to go smoothly as possible. And so my vision, if I'm thinking of anything, in the future, is how wonderful it'd be when they're in the house, or seeing them already in the house, happy, settled. The wedding went perfect. I mean, the wedding was the best day ever. It was just out of this world amazing. But there was a few lumps and bumps along the way to that. But all the time, as soon as that was brought to me to just offload, I'm just thinking, I love you and thank you. I love you and thank you. I would not have consciously said that to them, or out loud. I mean, I consciously was doing that, but I wasn't out loud saying that to them. But for me, I was keeping a very calm. I wasn't getting into that drama with them. You know, if there was a situation, there was on one occasion actually, where the DJ had phoned to say there was a situation with the hotel, and this was 2 weeks before the wedding, and it didn't look like they'd be able to get that hotel. I mean, literally, if we'd listened to that DJ, and even then I had to consciously bring in, because that did panic me a bit, and I was thinking, I love you and thank you, I love you and thank you. But for an absolute wonderful reason that happened, because the fiance was away on the hen do, Joey was at work, and so I went straight to the head office in Lyndhurst and talked to the most lovely girl. She completely reassured me, said, did I want to go out to the hotel the next day? And we met, you know, but that I think is because I'd consciously brought into my mind while all this was being said, even though I felt anxious, actually, I did feel an anxiety, but I knew to bring in the I love you and thank you. This is happening for a reason. And the outcome of that was we had the most beautiful day there, and I had no qualms whatsoever. Whatever came up on the day, if we run out of plates, if we run, you know, there was about 5 different things. I just went straight to them and it was sorted completely. Now, if I hadn't gone and met them, but I just think that clearness of mind, because I felt so clear and not really, I went to the girl in the head office and I was in a very calm, very loving state, you know, like I just feel I love you, thank you to life, really. Does that sound too ridiculous? But
no, it sounds amazing, because this is, you know, in this society that we live in this world that we live in, we're always going to be faced with problems. And as I said, I see it from a perspective, it's something that is being reflected to us, that gives us the opportunity to grow, to, you know, to look at the experience and say, you know, we've always got a choice in how we approach the experience. But using the hopo, no, I can't, I still can't, it doesn't matter how many times I try. It's something that can be used for people. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure going on in the world constantly, everything vying for our attention, you know, the latest this, the latest that. And it's so easy for us to be, you know, drawn into that energy of that. But as you were saying, with the wedding, and, you know, it is a moving house, getting married, you know, all the things that go with that. And, you know, being able to recognize that the experience will be as you imagine it to be, and getting into that frequency of gratitude and appreciation and clarity, clearance, makes something very special. So what I'm hoping, what you're sharing today, is that our viewers will, you know, use these principles and, you know, look into how this can be effective in their life. I mean, I know for myself, Jackie, I'm aware of it through you and obviously others. I have little knowledge, but I find that it's one of the most amazing things that we can do for ourselves, is empowering ourselves, so that when that timeline or that shift or whatever, because they're all created there by our oversoul, or other people, as I say, might call it different things, source, inner child, inner being, then it's just us, you know, learning about ourselves, recognizing different ways. And what I like to think, because although we don't choose the experiences per se, we choose which timeline we're going to go along, which experience we're going to have. And I think that's really what you're saying. And I think it's great that you can share that, you know, we all have problems, we all have issues, we all have got that potential for everything to, let's say, at times veer on the negative side of life.
Absolutely.
But, you know, the clarity that comes is, you know, what would you say is a really good way to remember this? Is there some, obviously you've been on the course, you've read the information, you've been teaching it, Jackie. So how would you suggest to people to remember this? Because I know some people might be a bit like me. There's a lot going on in life. We get very distracted, you know, through our jobs, our children, our work, and just life, society.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how what would you do? What do you do to remind yourself? Obviously, like anything, it must become quite autonomous and repetitive that you do. But if somebody's starting out, or maybe they forget because they've been doing this for some time and they haven't heard it, what would you suggest?
So to start with, when I was listening to the CD as I drove along, this was 11 years ago, and I was listening to the CD driving along, and it didn't resonate with me. The story did, and the outcome for Dr. Hugh Len. But when I heard Dr. Joe Vitale talking about it, I had a judgment around that, because he was very American, and he was constantly talking about he was trying to advertise his other things that he had going on, Mr. Firefox and different things. Kept bringing that in, and I just realised from that, looking back now, how judgmental I was. But then he did another one years later, at zero. So that was Zero Limits, but at zero, when he did it later, if you listen to that, then I was not alone in how I felt about that. So I actually put it on the burner for quite a few years, because even though I loved the concept and I knew there was something to it, I just couldn't resonate with, because if he was really, why would he be pushing us to buy other things as well? That's how it seemed. But by the time he did that next one, at zero, he was so humble. He had such a knock-in from the first one, from so many people, and he'd had so many life situations that he'd had to bring Ho'oponopono into it, that he actually wondered himself if it really did work, because he'd had such a time of it. So at zero, if you were going to look at Joe Vitale, and then the overall thanks to Joe Vitale for bringing that to the wider world as well, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know about it. So it was quite a few years before I took it up again. And that's when I saw that he was offering a course on it. And I thought, oh, I would quite like to do the course and just understand more, and I'd heard the, more humble one that he'd done by then, and thought, oh, well, he's learned a lot from that. So I thought, by doing the course, and so that's when I really started taking it on. And it's like driving a car. You don't even have to think now. I mean, obviously you do consciously have to think, but you could switch off. You can sometimes think, how did I get from there to there? Because I don't remember that. So you are constantly, with Ho'oponopono, I just know that it's running constantly. And it's only when something comes up specifically, a situation, or I hear something on the radio, if I'm driving along and I've got a radio on, and I don't listen to the news at home in any way. I don't listen to the news. But if I'm in the car and you're listening to music, and then the radio comes, the news comes on, gosh, I start doing Ho'oponopono, because that's been brought to my attention for some reason. So it literally is. And when Mabel Cat says, just I love you and thank you, divinity knows what needs clearing for you. We live completely from old tapes, old programs, old things, replaying and replaying. So if you get 99 compliments and one negative, what are you going to think about? That type of thing. Yeah. So now if that would have happened to me, I'd be straight in with, I'm sorry, or I love you and thank you. Because can you imagine going out in the world all day thinking I love you to everything and everyone, and thank you, gratitude and love.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? It's an absolutely great feeling. And, I think that's a reflection of our oversoul. I think that's how it literally has that, non-judgment, or that it's a completely different experience. Of course it is, or else why would we be existing? Why would we be in consciousness? And I think that is just so cool that we are born with emotions. We are connected to our soul through those emotions, and when we feel gratitude, that is the soul fully expressing itself, and we get the benefit of that. So using the Hopo, and also, is there a particular order or anything that you have to say these?
It doesn't matter what order at all, any order. And if you feel bad, because obviously I started with the 4 all the time, over and over again in my mind, over and over again. And you can say it out loud. They say it's more effective out loud. Also, I've walked the labyrinth. There's a beautiful labyrinth in Romsey, and we've walked the labyrinth all saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you, over and over again. That's like even that's a boost of Ho'oponopono,
A group with others you mentioned there. So
yeah, to walk around a labyrinth saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. I mean, just wonderful, because you go into a labyrinth to find yourself, you go into a maze to lose yourself. Yeah. So yeah.
And group, the power of the group, because there is something about those aspects of self coming together, and in that state of appreciation and magic, and that openness of gratitude and forgiveness. These are that must be very empowering. So what you're saying is you just keep repeating, and then this and with others as well.
Yes, because then another powerful one is, if you know emotional freedom technique, which I know you know, Jess, but I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you, or whatever way it goes.
That's really empowering. So anybody who doesn't know about that, that's something to perhaps have a quick dive into, have a look, and actually, because that in itself is also very empowering, isn't it? And there's something about when we're touching and intending, I guess to say, is bringing that stronger kind of into this physical reality, that energy into this physical reality, and confirming it. So these are really good. The other thing that I did, I don't know if you've ever done this, or perhaps I'm sure you would have mentioned it in your workshops, because you've mentioned you've been teaching this, Jackie, and for some time by the sounds of it, I used to write it down and have it on a little card, so that when in the early days it was a kind of reminder, just to, when I felt that sense of judgment or upset or whatever it was, projected perhaps at another, perhaps it didn't quite meet my expectation or something. And that card just was a reminder. It was really helpful. And so
I'm just going to show you my card. You just reminded me. This is on my card. Awesome. If I can get it out. So that's my card. But on the back, I've got Ho'oponopono.
I love that. That is awesome.
So that's also on my phone as well. So I open the phone and I see that straight away. I open my purse and I see that straight away.
I love that. That's really good. So again, these are physical things that can help remind us of where we come from, what we represent, and how we can live a much freer, easier life here by using these tools. Really quite simple as well, as you say, but so empowering. So Jackie, tell me about your workshops. Are you running any workshops at the moment? Is there?
Well, do you know, I haven't got one booked up at the minute, but actually several people said, would I do one online as well? So I'm going to sort out a 6-week online course for Ho'oponopono. Well, probably combine with happiness as well, because everything's so interlinked, isn't it, Jessica? All the things that we know, they do interlink with each other. So I mean, overall, it's about loving yourself. Even Dr. Hugh Len talks about how much Ho'oponopono, the need to love yourself, because there is only you in your reality. And when I did the happiness course with Robert Holding, that was a whole week of learning how to love yourself. And I can tell you then, in 2010, I didn't understand that at all.
Do you know, I think there's probably not one of us alive that haven't realized at some point it is actually about, as you say, loving yourself. And then when you love yourself, these other situations, and using these tools, the situations around us really begin to change. And you were certainly indicating that how your life's changed from when you started to where you are now. And how is that? How would you say, what's the kind of number one thing that your life has changed from? As you say, there's many tools of which we are, and remembering who we are. But what would you say has been the greatest changes that have occurred from, from where you've got to, from where you've come from, really?
Well, I mean, from that, I started the Inspirations Positive Living group. You remember, well, that was after the happiness course as well, because Sally, she's changed her name now, but you remember Sally, forgotten her name, but bless her, it was Sally that started the Inspirations Positive Living group. And within a month, she asked me if I would take over, because life was, a bit tough for her at that time. So that was in 2013, April 2013, I took over. And that really changed it. So that wasn't through Ho'oponopono, that was more about the happiness. But I'd, gone to that neuro-linguistic programming, and he'd said, you need to, if we've learned stuff, share it. So that sort of opened me up to, and luckily Sally Parsons, it was Sally Parsons.
Okay, yes. Lovely.
Yeah, I can't remember what her name is now. But anyway, yeah, she had started that up, but she'd come on the happiness course and then said, would I like to take it over? And I just knew it was for me. I'd never considered doing the positive living group before. Did that for 8 years in person, every single week in Southampton. So that, what I learned from that, and the different speakers that I had, Jess, well, you being one of them, a few times, thankfully. Yeah. But meeting you, so that it's the people that I've met, the possibilities that have come about. I just do feel life's a bit of a miracle, really. And even now, even through these last 2.5 years, even more, it's opened up even more. I've met so many more people, because I remember I'd had a reading with Pam Gregory in 2012, and she said by April 2013, my whole life would have changed. I would have opened up, met loads of new people. And in March of that year, I know I'd done the happiness course, but we'd only had like the 14, and that was wonderful, 14 people on there. But I wouldn't have said I'd met a lot of people. And then it was practically the last day of March that Sally said to me, would I consider taking it over? And I took it over the next week, which was the April, and I didn't realise that at the time, but looking back at the reading, Pam had said, April 2013, your whole life's going to open up. And there was no sign of it mid-March that was going to happen. Not that I was thinking that, but looking back at the reading, I can see now. And sure enough, April 2013, everything changed for me. And it's just been, marvellous experiences since. Of course, there's been, ups and downs, but...
Well, Jackie, you are literally an inspiration. Inspirations, positive living, inspiring lady doing these courses. What you do for people, I think you're brilliant at literally becoming, being that oversoul. And I would say that, what you've been saying to us about the Hopo and everything, how it has literally allowed you to cleanse, clear, open up, go back to the zero, as you mentioned. And which is that alignment, isn't it? It is that alignment of our soul that has created it all, and being able to see what you've done it's nearly 10 years then, isn't it? Really, since next year will certainly be 10 years since you started or took over the inspiration.
12 that I did the happiness course. Yes, so next year is 10 years.
So it's going to be a big year for you, and one being new beginnings and representing the zero. It's going to be really interesting to see, where you go from here. But, I'm, for one, a great fan of Inspirations, for everything that you do. And I really, really appreciate you being here today and sharing, really honestly, your experiences, the journey that you've taken, to get here. And I really hope it's going to be inspiring for other people who, to know that you can follow a path, and even just simple things, because I often get from spirit, keep it simple. They literally, I hear it resounding, and I think it's meant to be. Like, life can be so complicated, can't it? It can be so, so much, and we can weigh down by it.
Absolutely. We can make it so, get caught up repeating the thoughts. And that's when, to repeat the thought, I love you and thank you, is pretty good, isn't it? Even waking up in the night when you get the silly thoughts, because you even do that, I do that now, but very quickly that comes in. I love you, thank you, I love you, thank you. And I'm back to sleep. I mean, literally, it's that good.
So use it at night time, carry a card around with you, get into the habit of just saying it. And particularly when something does go wrong, particularly when you feel some kind of, let's say, negative emotion that arises because we see something outside ourselves that we don't like or we don't resonate with, and it makes us feel uncomfortable or fearful or panicking, is just to be able to take that responsibility, to be able to use those 4 sentences or words, and then literally just breathe, relax into that, and come back to a state of more alignment, of more stillness, because that's certainly what it seems to do, for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll just say as well, with Mabel Katz's book, in the back there's all these question and answers, and there is one about the inner child, so that's so important. It all combined with loving yourself. But so the inner child and loving your inner child is very, very important. And what Dr. Hugh Len also says is you can't expect everything to be cleared straight away. Divinity knows what needs to be cleared for you. If it cleared everything straight away, you'd dry up like a shriveled prune.
I love that. I often say, like, you burst into some spontaneous combustion or something and disappear. If we got it all now, and that really isn't the purpose of life. So I love that. It's about having the experience, about the judgment and the non-judgment, and the responsibility and the non-responsibility, and always recognizing that we can do something about it, that we can change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jackie, I have absolutely loved having you on here. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to do my attempt now at popping up onto the screen your details, because I was going to ask you, where is it that we can find you?
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It doesn't seem to be there. So
I don't know that I can. In comments. That won't even show though, will it? But it's www.jackie, Jackie. It's there. Jackie-white.co.uk.
Lovely, thank you. And you've also mentioned Facebook Positive Living Inspirations Positive Living Group. So Inspirations
on Facebook, my page is Inspirations PLG Positive Living Group, but it just says PLG, Inspirations PLG. On Facebook, and I'm on BitChute as well, Inspirations PLG.
So go along and find Jackie. She does some amazing interviews to some amazing people on her PLG group. I mean, really is inspiring. And also to keep in touch. But one thing I want to end with here, Jackie, is, when are you going to write your book? Because I just got very clearly by spirit to say, Jackie, I can see a book. So I'm just passing that one over.
I've just goosed at you saying that, Jess.
Yeah.
I mean, it does go through my mind. And I joined a Conscious Cafe meeting the other night with Nick Williams, all about how to start with writing a book, funny enough.
Well, I'm going to wish you the best with that, because look how everyone, one day we're going to see Jackie White's book out there. I have no doubt about it. And in the meantime, just keep doing what you're doing, Jackie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Can't thank you enough. So much love. And let's remember.
So much love. I love you, Jess.
Love you too. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.